Welcome to Just Asia, AHRC TV's weekly human rights program. These are the headlines. Pakistan court places Hindu girls in protection after conversion and marriage to Muslim men. Burma's top court to hear appeal of Reuters journalist. Indian bystanders assault Nigerian man for misbehaving with traffic police. Indonesian activists arrested for singing anti-military song. Amnesty says Hong Kong freedoms deteriorating severely. Teenage girl gang raped and put to death in Bangladesh. Welcome to AHRC TV's Just Asia. I'm Alexandra. This week, Just Asia begins with Pakistan, where two teenage Hindu girls were placed in a government shelter on Tuesday after allegation of their forced conversation and marriage to Muslim men. The Islamabad High Court issued the protection order for the two sisters, saying it acted on a petition from them. It also placed their husbands under protection in a separate shelter due to fears of attack by the girls' parents. Pakistani media, meanwhile, have cited the girls as claiming they were married of their own free will. The lawyer further claims they are not minors, contradicting their families' statements. According to the girls' family from the Sindh town of Kyaw, the sisters are 13 and 15 years old and were abducted and forced to convert and marry the man. The sisters' elder brother, Shaman Das, said they were taken during the celebration of Hindu festival of Holi last Friday. While marriage under the age of 18 is illegal in Pakistan, the law is often ignored. Sindh police have so far arrested several suspects in the case, including the cleric who performed the weddings. An investigation into the case has been launched, and upon its completion, the Islamabad court said it would take up the case next Tuesday. The Human Rights Commission of Pakistan, as well as various human rights activists, have called for the Sindh parliament to adopt a bill against forced conversions. Next, Burma's Supreme Court agreed Tuesday to rule on an appeal filed by two Reuters journalists sentenced to 7 years in prison for reporting on the country's brutal crackdown on Rohingya Muslims. Reporters Wallon and Kyaw remained in insane prison while their lawyers attended the court's first hearing on their appeal. The reporters' convictions for violating the country's Official Secrets Act have been globally condemned. The appeal contends that lower court ruling in the case involved errors in judicial procedures. Lawyer Khin Maung Zaw said Tuesday that in a 90-minute submission to the court, he cited 13 grounds on which he believed judicial procedure had been violated. Tuesday's decision by the court means the reporter's lawyer will meet again with the judge, who could sustain the appeal if he determines that legal procedure had been violated. This could result in the reporters being freed, having their sentences reduced, or facing new judicial action. No date was set for the next appearance before the judge. In India, a mob beat up a Nigerian man for assaulting a traffic police officer, while a complaint has been filed against a Nigerian man named Prince. There has been no action taken against the mob. Vigilantism and mob violence has been steadily on the rise in India recently. At the same time, spectator apathy and indifference to violence and abuse is also a bane in the country, with numerous attacks occurring whereby spectators only record the incidents on their phone, rather than helping the victims. This makes the beating up of the Nigerian man stand out. According to clinical psychologist Dr. Rajat Mitra, empathy and prejudice plays a role in people's response to violence. The mob's racial empathy and identification with the policeman, together with any prejudice they have against Africans, apparently make them take the side of the policeman. Just Asia speaks to Dr. Rajat Mitra for details.
This is an issue that has shaken a lot of people, and particularly the black people who are living in New Delhi. There is a sizable number of people from Africa who live here, and they have been living in terror, and sense of trauma has engulfed them. We do not know whether in this case he misbehaved or not, what he did. We don't know that. But I think that whether he misbehaved or not, it does not justify a crowd going ahead and beating him up and lynching him. I think that's this thing about misbehavior can be used as a justification by the crowd. Nothing justifies the crowd, even if he were to misbehave. That's what I would say, right? This shows that there may not be a rule of law present in the country that such an thing can take place towards someone who is not a native Indian, right? Now, coming back to why people do this, Delhi is not a city where lynchings are unknown, right? Some time back, there was another black person who ran for his life as the crowd chased him at a railway station, and with great difficulty, he could save his life. Such incidents happen regularly. People from Northeast also, some of them have gone through lynching. And if you talk to them, the people from the Northeast of India or people who are blacks, they often talk about that there is a great deal of fun that is made out of them. They are teased, they are taunted, names are made out of them. And if you talk to many Indians about them, they also have very skewed beliefs about blacks, that they are drug addicts, they lift children, and often rumors fly that such and such person living in this area has done such and such crime. They are not seen as straightforward people. So there is a lot of myth building that takes place in such situations that lead to collective violence on the part of people. Now, the collective violence takes place because somewhere we Indians, I think we have stopped believing in the rule of law. We don't believe that an objective assessment can be made. In the due course of law, things can be worked out, and the person who has done the wrong, he can be given a punishment. So the crowd decides to take it into his own hands. And in this situation also, the crowd decided to take the whole thing into their own hands to beat up that person. Their reasoning, their ability to reason out, rationally looking at the whole issue was completely absent. This is something too often that happens on the roads of Delhi, and it is important that we look at our criminal justice system, that why it is not able to deliver for people to take such a course of action. It is just not with blacks alone. There are, for example, if someone is suspected of being a thief, he's beaten publicly and people watch it. If someone is suspected of, say, picking up, abducting a children and taking, without ascertaining the fact, sometimes the crowd will just pounce on him and go ahead and beat him up. So these things are really not unknown. So it is not that it is something happening for the first time. I don't know whether they are increasing in India. I think they are being more brought to notice. I think Indians are becoming also more aware of such things. Earlier, for example, if a thief was, a suspected thief was caught, beaten up, lynched, it would not find a place in the newspapers. Today, it finds a place. Earlier, if, say, a person who's not like us were to happen. So, this is a very debatable issue, that whether such incidents are increasing or whether because of awareness such issues are more coming to light. To me, they have always been there. To me, we have always been a society where the collective takes over, lynches, beats up people, and the proper course of justice is not able to follow itself through. I think what is important here is to see that as we are becoming more aware, it is important for people to look and understand why it is happening, what is making it happen, and how it can be prevented. So for that, I would say that one of the first things to be done is to be educational courses in schools where you talk about what is lynching, why lynching should not be done, and also in police stations that the police do not support lynching. Very often they feel that it is the collective justice of the crowd, and they feel a sense of validation. I have seen in some personal examples where I had been involved in investigations, and some sexual assaulters, rapists, suspected rapists, I would say, they were brought to the police station, and the crowd has assembled and they beat them up, with the police saying nothing, with the police saying that what is happening is right. So this sense of that lynching is righteous, that it is the right thing to do, has to go from our minds before we can stop that. That is very important to do it at an educational level, at a criminal justice level. Perhaps if we talk to judges and police officers, we find that a lot of them feel that it is okay for the crowd to do it. The reason given our delay in justice or the anger of the people, that people have not been taught as to how to channelize their anger and express it.
In Indonesia, well-known activist, human rights defender and university lecturer Mr. Robertus Robert was arrested for singing an old anti-military song at a protest in front of the presidential palace on February 28. Robert was protesting the government's plan to put high-ranking military officers into government positions, likening the plans to the Suharto era. After a video of Robert singing the song was posted on various social media, Robert was arrested by the Indonesian Police Cybercrime Unit on March 7th. Robert was charged under Article 28(2) of the Repressive Law on Electronic Information and Transaction Law, as well as Article 207 of Indonesia's Criminal Code for insulting an authority or a public institution. If found guilty, he could face 6 years in prison. He was detained for 24 hours before being released. Although after his release, the police claimed Robert was arrested as a measure to protect him from potential reprisal from the military or its sympathizers. It is clearly that the freedom of expression is being criminalized in Indonesia. The use of criminal provisions regarding insults to any authority or public institution is inconsistent with Indonesia's human rights obligations. Human rights groups and civil society are calling for the police and the government to drop all charges against Mr. Robertus Robert and other human rights defenders for their peaceful exercise of the right to freedom of expression. Next, Hong Kong's human rights have deteriorated severely over the past years. Amnesty International said on Tuesday, in its year-end review. The Human Rights Watchdog's report cited a string of setbacks in freedoms, including the government's prosecution of leading democracy campaigners, its expulsion of a British journalist, the ban on a pro-independence party, and the barring of candidates from local elections. While Hong Kong enjoys freedom unseen in mainland China, protected by the 50-year handover agreement between Britain and China, there are growing fears at the erosion of these liberties, with Beijing increasingly interfering in Hong Kong's affairs. Amnesty particularly accused HK authorities of increasingly depriving citizens of their rights by expanding the interpretation of national security. The concept of national security as used by Hong Kong government is arbitrarily applied to suppress dissent and political opposition, the report said. Amnesty's report came days after the U.S. State Department released a report warning that increased restriction on Hong Kong's freedom were hurting business confidence. Lastly, Bangladesh police recovered a 13-year-old girl's body, who was allegedly put to death by feeding her insecticides after gang rape in Shahzadpur. The girl was identified as Pali Khatun. According to locals, Pali went to a land in her neighborhood to collect greens on Tuesday afternoon. At that time, 3 teenagers of the village raped her as they found her alone. Later, they fed her insecticide. Pali got home and felt sick. She told her parents everything that had happened. She was hospitalized locally, but died on the way to Shahid Zia Rahman Medical College Hospital. According to the police, the autopsy report will reveal the cause of death. That is all for this episode of Just Asia. For more on this and other issues, please visit www.humanrights.asia or www.alrc.asia/justasia. Thank you for watching and see you next week.